Have you ever wished you could step back into your own childhood? Even for just a moment? Think about it. The world was a place of pure magic, where a patch of sunlight became a kingdom and a cardboard box was a spaceship bound for distant stars. Back then, the line between real and imaginary barely existed. Monsters might have hidden under your bed, but you faced them bravely, armed with a flashlight and a stuffed animal sidekick. That sense of wonder wasn't just innocence. It was the foundation of hope, of belief in possibility, of trust in the world. Yet, inevitably, a shadow crept in, the first hard questions, the first heartbreaks, the quiet realization that parents can't fix everything and some stories don't have happy endings. But even as innocence faded, something deeper began to awaken. We started to ask, why? Why do people get sick? Why do friends fight? Why does the world sometimes feel unfair? Those first doubts weren't the end of magic. They were the spark of a bigger adventure. The journey toward understanding, toward growing up, toward becoming ourselves. And if we're honest, some part of that enchanted garden is always with us. When life knocks us down or the road ahead seems impossible, it's the memory of childhood wonder that helps us believe, if only for a heartbeat, that anything is possible. Maybe that's the secret Jung was after. Childhood is not a place we leave behind, but a treasure we carry forward, a light to guide us through every new and uncertain stage of life. Have you ever wished, just for a heartbeat, to return to the garden of your childhood? Close your eyes and you can almost feel it. The sunshine spilling through leaves, the soft hum of summer air, the scent of crayons and warm cookies. The world back then wasn't just a place, it was magic itself. A backyard could become a kingdom, a cardboard box a spaceship heading beyond the stars, and every shadow held both a monster and a secret passageway. In that enchanted time, we weren't weighed down by doubt or fear. We trusted everything, believed in miracles, and knew with fierce certainty that we were safe, loved, and destined for adventure. But slowly, almost quietly, the shadows crept in, first questions, first heartbreaks, first cracks in the safe walls of home. The realization that even superheroes can't stop everything, that some stories don't end the way we hoped. And yet, Jung would tell us, this is where the true adventure begins, because doubt isn't the end of magic. It's the spark that lights the path to something even greater. When a child asks, why does it have to be this way? That's the moment they begin to grow, to search, to truly see. We may call it losing innocence, but really, it's the beginning of wisdom. And here's the secret Jung whispers to us. Childhood isn't something we leave behind. It's a treasure we carry forever. It lives inside us, in every moment of wonder, every flicker of hope, every time we dare to believe that, somehow, someway, anything is still possible. And then, it happens. The fall. The moment we step out of that sunlit garden and into the strange, thrilling, terrifying land of self-awareness. It doesn't come all at once. Oh no, the slower, quieter, almost like a fog creeping in at dawn. One day, you wake up and suddenly you realize, you are not just part of the world, you are separate from it. You begin to notice the weight of your name, the way others see you, the quiet pull of approval and the sting of rejection. The world starts asking questions, harder ones this time. Who are you? What do you want? Where do you belong? And with those questions comes something else. Pressure. You feel it in the classroom, in the glances of your peers, in the subtle expectations that say you need to grow up, fit in, get serious. Gone is the effortless magic of childhood play. Now every action feels watched, every choice loaded with consequence. You start to compare. You start to hide parts of yourself. And though you wouldn't have words for it yet, you sense the shift deep in your bones. Life isn't just about wonder anymore. It's about survival, about carving out a place in the tribe, about proving yourself worthy of love, respect, tension. In American culture, this is where it hits hardest. The rush to be the best, the brightest, the most successful. We push kids faster and faster, rewarding competition over curiosity, achievement over awe. But here's the paradox. In this fall from innocence, in this messy, awkward, beautiful becoming, we don't actually lose our magic, we just bury it. Jung would say this is the first great task of the psyche, to build the ego, to become an individual, but at the same time, to carry within us the spark of that earlier world, to remember what it was like to simply be, to trust, to dream. And though we fall, we don't fall forever, because every stage of life, every problem we face, secretly calls us back toward that garden, toward wholeness, toward the parts of ourselves we thought we'd left behind but were really just waiting for us to return. And then comes youth. The storm, the wildfire, the great collision between who we were and who we're supposed to become. It hits hard, sometimes suddenly, like lightning splitting the sky. One day, you're still a child, safe, sheltered, and the next, the world feels too small for you. You feel it in your chest, this restless pull, this electric hunger for freedom, for something bigger, wilder, more thrilling than the life you've known. You begin to dream of leaving the nest, leaving home, leaving the familiar, leaving behind the rules and walls that once made you feel safe. And yet, at the very same moment, there's a quiet fear underneath it all, because nobody tells you that chasing freedom also means letting go of certainty. Suddenly, life isn't just about what you want, it's about who you are willing to become. In America, we romanticize this phase. The rebellious teenager, the bold college freshman, the bright-eyed dreamer chasing ambition. We celebrate independence. We glorify self-made success. We push every young person to find their purpose, their passion, their perfect path. But beneath that glossy surface, the truth is much messier. Youth isn't just freedom, it's confusion. It's nights spent questioning everything. It's mistakes that burn, failures that humiliate, and the dizzying realization that no one, no parent, no teacher, no friend can make your choices for you anymore. Jung called this the great confrontation with the self, the moment where we can no longer hide in childhood dreams or parental shadows. We must step forward, clumsy and terrified, to claim our place in the world. And though it feels like nobody else understands, the truth is, everyone has walked this path in some way. Every adult you know has carried that same ache, the longing to belong, the terror of getting it wrong, the fragile hope that somehow, someday, it will all make sense. This is the great paradox of youth. We think we're alone, but in reality, this struggle connects us all. And somewhere, beneath all the noise, the bravado, the rebellion, that quiet, ancient voice inside us whispers, keep going, you are becoming. And then, the storm deepens. You've left the nest, but now you're drifting in unfamiliar skies, no map, no compass, just the raw pulse of your own longing. This is the battle for identity, the great struggle with shadows. It's the chapter no one warns you about, the one where the enemy isn't out there anymore. It's within. You feel it creeping in late at night, when the noise fades and you're left alone with your thoughts, doubt, fear, the crushing weight of expectations. You start to realize that every choice you make carves you deeper into yourself. And yet, you're not even sure who that self is. In a world obsessed with labels, with perfect profiles, with filtered snapshots of happiness, to become so easy to slip into roles, to wear masks just to belong. You become the achiever, the rebel, the people pleaser, the chameleon. Anything to quiet that gnawing question, am I enough? Social media feeds it. Every scroll reminding you of what you're not, what you lack, what others seem to have figured out so easily. And still, beneath all that noise, your shadow grows. Jung called it the hidden self, the part we don't want to face, the fears we bury, the truths we avoid. But here's the secret no one tells you. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It's the mirror showing you what you've denied, what you secretly crave, what you must reclaim to feel whole again, the anger you suppress, the dreams you've abandoned, the desires you're afraid to name. They're not here to shame you, they're here to free you. This is the hardest part of the journey, the stage where you lose friends, where you question everything, where some nights you wonder if you'll ever feel at peace again. But listen closely, because this is also where your greatest power is born. Every time you face the parts of yourself you've been running from, you step closer to freedom. Every time you speak the truth you've been too afraid to say, you grow lighter, stronger, braver. And though it feels like you're falling apart, what's really happening is that you're falling into yourself. And then comes the hardest question of all, the one that creeps in slowly, quietly, when the rush of youth fades and the adrenaline of rebellion wears off. The question that keeps you awake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, am I really growing up? Or am I just growing stuck? You see, there comes a moment when chasing freedom turns into chasing comfort, when we stop dreaming bigger and start playing it safe, when we trade curiosity for certainty and call it being realistic. You might land the job, get the degree, start the relationship, tick all the right boxes, and yet something inside feels empty, stuck, like you're living someone else's life, walking someone else's path. Jung saw this moment as a crossroads, a dangerous one. He called it spiritual stagnation, a state where we cling to habits, roles, and routines not because they fit, but because we're too afraid to question them. And here's the tricky part. The world will reward you for it. Promotions, praise, social approval, they all pour in when you follow the script. But late at night, when the noise fades, you know the truth. You know whether you've settled, whether you've started building walls around yourself instead of bridges toward the unknown. In America, we're taught to idolize success, but rarely are we taught to ask whether our version of success is even ours to begin with. We're told to climb the ladder, but no one asks whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall. And somewhere deep inside, a small voice begins to whisper, the same voice you heard as a child, when you believed the world was wide and full of wonder. There's more than this job, more than this paycheck, more than this version of you that you've outgrown. But here's the hardest truth of all. Breaking free isn't easy. It requires courage to walk away from the life you've carefully built, to question the choices that everyone else praises, to admit that you don't have it all figured out. And yet, Jung reminds us, this is exactly where true growth begins, not in clinging to certainty, but in daring to enter the unknown once again. Because the choice is always yours. Keep growing, or keep hiding. Keep evolving, or keep pretending. You don't have to know all the answers right now. You just have to be willing to ask the question, am I living, or merely surviving? And then, finally, you arrive. Or at least, that's what everyone says. Adulthood, the so-called destination, the high noon of life, the peak of the mountain you've been climbing for so long. You've checked the boxes: career, marriage, maybe kids, maybe a house, car, a retirement plan. From the outside, it looks like you've made it. People admire you. They call you successful, responsible, grounded. You've reached the summit. But deep down, you know something they don't. You know the view from up here isn't quite what you imagined. Because here's the great illusion of adulthood. You think the arrival will bring peace, certainty, happiness, but instead, you find yourself looking around and asking, softly, almost ashamed, is this all there is? The very things you worked so hard to achieve now feel heavy, like golden chains. The job that once thrilled you feels like routine. The house feels like a box. The marriage, if you have one, sometimes feels like a script you've memorized but stopped feeling. Jung called this the midday of life, the point where the sun is highest in the sky, and yet, shadows begin to stretch in unexpected places. And in America, this illusion runs deep. We are a culture obsessed with achievement, addicted to productivity, always chasing the next milestone: more money, more status, more validation. But we rarely stop to ask whether what we're chasing is even real. We rarely question whether the version of success we're living was ever our own dream, or just a dream we inherited from others. And here's the quiet tragedy of this stage. Many people stop here. They settle. They convince themselves this numbness is normal, that the spark they once felt was just childish fantasy. They work harder, buy more, distract themselves with noise. Anything to avoid that unsettling question echoing in the back of their minds. But Jung saw something else here. He believed this illusion of arrival isn't a dead end. It's a doorway, a chance to begin again. Because when everything you thought would fulfill you starts to feel hollow, that's not failure. It's a signal, a sacred invitation to turn inward, to rediscover the parts of yourself you left behind along the way, to ask not what the world wants from you, but what your soul has been whispering all along. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a deeper chapter. The question is, will you have the courage to walk through that door? And then, the light begins to change. You don't notice it at first. It's subtle, like the shifting of seasons, like the way autumn sneaks up on summer, soft and slow. One morning, you look in the mirror and see something you didn't before. A line on your face, a hint of weariness in your eyes, a question lingering behind your reflection. Where did the time go? This is the crisis of the middle, the moment when the sun begins its slow descent, when the brightness of high noon fades and long shadows stretch across your path. And it's here, right here, that many people stumble. They call it a midlife crisis. They joke about it, sports cars, impulsive decisions, chasing lost youth. But behind the humor, there's something raw, something aching, grief. Grief for the paths not taken. Grief for the dreams quietly abandoned. Grief for the person you thought you would be by now. And the quiet shock of realizing you've become someone else entirely. Jung called this stage the Great Reckoning. It's the point where you're no longer running toward something, but instead, you start running from the weight of your own past. And in America, we rarely sit with this discomfort. We rush to fix it, to patch it up with distractions, new gadgets, new relationships, new goals. Anything to avoid that quiet whisper growing louder inside. You are not who you used to be, and you never will be again. But what if this isn't a crisis at all? What if it's a calling? Jung believed this stage is not a collapse, it's a threshold. A chance to finally face yourself, fully and honestly, without illusion. A chance to ask, what parts of me have I left behind? What truths have I been too afraid to face? And, perhaps hardest of all, what do I need to let go of to become who I was meant to be next? This is where the real work begins. Not in fixing what's broken, but in surrendering to what is, in accepting that the sun is setting, and in finding beauty, not fear, in the twilight, because every sunset holds a secret. It's not an ending. It's a preparation for a different kind of light. And then, we enter the season that no one wants to talk about. Aging, growing old, watching the mirror change in ways we can't control. In America, we don't just fear aging, we deny it. We hide it under layers of makeup, behind gym memberships, inside cosmetic procedures and Instagram filters. We call it anti-aging, as if getting older is a disease to be cured, not a journey to be honored. Youth is worshipped here, its energy, its beauty, its boldness. But what happens to those who can no longer pretend to be young? Where do they go? Jung saw this clearly. He knew that aging isn't just about the body. It's about the soul's deepest need, meaning. In many cultures, elders are revered, seen as wisdom keepers, storytellers, guides for the younger generations. But here, in this fast-paced world obsessed with the next new thing, older people often feel invisible, discarded, forgotten. Retirement becomes exile. Slowing down feels like failure. And beneath it all lies a quiet, unspoken question. If I'm no longer useful to society, do I still matter? This is the hidden crisis of aging, not just the fear of death, but the fear of becoming irrelevant. And yet, There is a quiet dignity waiting here for those willing to embrace it. Jung believed that the later stages of life hold a sacred task, a turning inward, a harvesting of all that's been lived and learned. It's a time not for chasing, but for reflecting, not for proving, but for understanding, not for building, but for becoming whole. The search for meaning in this season isn't about achievement. It's about integration. It's about weaving together every chapter, every scar, every joy and heartbreak into a story that makes sense, even in its contradictions. And perhaps this stage offers a freedom that no other can, the freedom to simply be, to sit in stillness, to savor the present without rushing toward the future, to offer your presence, your experience, your wisdom, not because you need validation, but because you know now that the greatest gift you can give is simply yourself. Aging isn't the end of life. It's the beginning of a new kind of beauty, a beauty rooted not in youth, but in truth, a beauty that doesn't shout, but whispers, I have lived, and that is enough. And then, after all the storms, the striving, the searching, you arrive at the quiet season, the wisdom years, a time often overlooked, yet perhaps the most profound chapter of all. This is the stage where the frantic noise of the world finally begins to fade, where the endless chasing of youth and ambition slowly falls away, leaving behind something simpler, something richer. Here, you no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer measure your worth by titles, trophies, or timelines. Instead, you begin to harvest. Harvest not just memories, but lessons, the deep, often hard-won truths that only a lifetime of living can teach. In this season, you begin to see life differently. You understand now that every joy and every heartbreak, every success and every mistake, were not random. They were threads in a tapestry, weaving you into exactly who you were meant to become. Jung believed this was the true purpose of aging, not decline, not loss but integration, the coming together of all parts of the self. At last, in these wisdom years, you see with softer eyes, you forgive more easily, you hold grief with more tenderness, you laugh without worrying how it sounds, and, perhaps most beautifully of all, you realize that what once seemed so urgent, status, competition, approval was never the point. The point was love, connection, meaning. And now, you have the chance to give back, not through grand gestures or dramatic acts, but simply by being present, by listening, by sharing your story, honestly and without shame, because you know now that your story matters, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. In America, we often miss this. We rush through every stage of life, terrified of slowing down, terrified of the quiet. But here, in this stillness, you discover a freedom like no other, the freedom to simply be, to sit with yourself, fully whole, fully human, and to offer your presence as a gift to others. These are the years of deep roots, of quiet strength, of wisdom that speaks not through words, but through the way you live. And perhaps, in these final chapters, you finally understand it was never about finding the perfect life. It was always about learning how to live it fully, just as it is. And then we arrive at the last threshold, the place no one wants to look, but no one can avoid, the ultimate unknown, death, the final horizon we all must face, no matter how fast we run, no matter how well we plan. In America, we don't like to talk about it. We hide it behind closed doors, softened words, polite silences. We celebrate youth endlessly, but we turn away from the one truth that binds us all. Everything that lives must also let go. Jung wasn't afraid to face this. He believed death isn't just an ending. It's a culmination, a return, a homecoming. He saw it not as a failure of life, but as its natural, necessary completion. And here, at this final stage, something remarkable happens. If we have walked the previous stages with honesty, with courage, we are no longer afraid. The fear of death softens, not because we've conquered it, but because we've befriended it. We begin to see that death is not a thief, it's a teacher. Teaches us to let go, to surrender, to trust that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. In these quiet moments, faith often appears, not always religious faith, but a deeper kind of trust, a knowing that life moves in cycles, that endings are never truly endings, that even in loss, something sacred remains. And perhaps, this is the final gift of life, not answers, not certainty, but peace. The peace that comes from accepting what is, from releasing the need to control, from recognizing that we were never separate from the great rhythm of existence. We were always held within it. Jung called this the final task, to meet death not with resistance, but with grace, to step across that last threshold with open hands, carrying not fear, but gratitude. And as we stand here, at the edge of this unknown, we may realize something unexpected. Death isn't the darkness we feared. It's simply another doorway, another beginning, wrapped in mystery. And if we listen closely, we can almost hear it calling us onward, softly, tenderly, into whatever comes next.